Aloha and welcome to Ehana Kako, a weekly program on the ThinkTech Hawaii Broadcast Network. I'm Keli'i Akina, president of the Grassroot Institute, and today we're going to focus on issues that affect us from far away Washington, D.C., all the way here to Hawaii. And the reason for that is because I have a very exciting announcement. As you know, the Grassroot Institute is Hawaii's independent research think tank. We stand for individual liberty and free markets and limited accountable government, and we're going on to our 15th year. But this year, we have established a new component. Here in Hawaii, we have the Research Institute, the think tank that does research and education, but we've just formed Grassroot Action Hawaii, Grassroot Hawaii Action. It's a 501c4 organization that will help us in Washington, D.C. to work for those things that are good for Hawaii, things that advance the cause of constitutional liberties, the cause of free markets, and as well limited accountable government. And we're going to be working with congressmen and women, senators and others, private citizens in D.C., our own representatives there, as well as those of other states, in order to ensure that Hawaii is on the map and that the needs of Hawaii for better government, for better economy and society are actually going to be addressed the best way they can from Washington, D.C. Now, in order to carry out this task, we need to expand our team at the Grassroot Institute. So I'm very delighted that in addition to some of our staff, especially our policy director, Blom, who resides in Washington, D.C., we have now joining us as the executive director of Grassroot Hawaii Action, a gentleman who has tremendous experience in operating such organizations, Mr. Blom. And right now, I'd like to welcome him to the program from Washington, D.C. We're in constant contact with each other between our two cities, Honolulu and D.C., and today is like none other. I'm talking with Blom, whom we call Andy. Andy, welcome to the program.
Aloha, it's great to see you.
Well, it's good to see you. Do you miss Hawaii's weather?
Yes, I miss Hawaii and Hawaii's weather pretty desperately.
Well,
Ronald Reagan said the most frightening sentence in English is, "I'm from Washington and I'm here to help." Well, I'm in Washington to help Hawaii. So
well, how about that? You know, you're known in Hawaii as the guy from Washington, and you're known in Washington as the guy from Hawaii. And how do you like your dual roles with the love and the influence in both parts of the country?
Well, if we can help Hawaii, then we're doing something good, and I feel kind of like an exile, because I miss the sun, I miss the water, I miss the people, but there's work to be done here.
Andy, you've been a long-term advocate of the values that Grassroot Institute stands for. You've been a public advocate in many ways on many issues. What has led you to become part of the movement as our executive director for Washington, D.C. work?
Well, that's a great question, and you and I had some interesting discussions about this. And what we both came to was that there are issues that affect Hawaii that simply cannot be dealt with in Hawaii. There's a lot of them. One of the things, just being up here a couple of weeks, is just inundated with things that have impacts in Hawaii, and the people in Hawaii aren't necessarily finding out about them, and our representatives do the best job they can representing a particular ideology, but there are places where they're not working in the same direction as we feel is most beneficial to Hawaii, or frankly, in the direction where the majority of people in Hawaii are focused. For example, the Jones Act. And this is something that has an enormous impact on Hawaii. We need to have a reform of the Jones Act, and we need to get Hawaii on the map so some people will pay attention to it.
Well, that's a good issue to start talking about today, because you know that the Grassroot Institute, along with Hawaii Shippers Council and numerous colleagues here in the state of Hawaii, has been working toward an updating of the Jones Act for the 21st century. I think that most people realize something needs to be done, but being able to go to Washington, D.C. and to work directly with members of Congress and with D.C.-based organizations, why is that so important in order to actually affect change in the Jones Act?
Well, it's a question of raising awareness and understanding of the Act. It's also a question of building coalitions, getting people with influence to move our Senate and our Congress to take some action. Just last week, I had the opportunity to discuss with a member of Parliament from Australia to discuss a reform of the Jones Act. They're very interested in it and very interested in making it part of their discussions about trade in the Pacific.
Well, that's a good point that you raised, that in Washington, D.C., we can create coalitions that are not only between members of our state and other states, but also international, such as this ambassador from Australia. What is the international interest that we're able to work on from D.C.?
Well, in a very specific case, just to stay with Australia for a minute, Australia is very advanced in their ferry building. And one of the barriers to reestablishing ferry service in Hawaii is the requirement that we have Jones Act ships. If Australia would love to provide us with ferries, and they're technologically moving forward very dramatically in this area, they can't because of the Jones Act. And it's a limitation for Hawaii. It's a limitation for Australia. It's a limitation for a lot of places in the United States, in the mainland. We're part of the United States. I know that. Don't hold your calls and letters.
Well, Andy, you actually have pointed out something that can be very practical in terms of a strategy for working with people to update the Jones Act, and that is that there are international parties that have an interest in it. So as we work in Washington, D.C., we can look at legislation that has international components. For example, the Trans-Pacific Trade Agreement, which has many partners, some of whom would be very interested in some kind of updating of the Jones Act. Isn't that right?
That's absolutely true. And I had the advantage of being the representative from the Senate Majority Leader's office, from Mr. McConnell's office, and brought this issue up in terms of I had literally just had the conversation with the Australian Member of Parliament, and they were very interested. They're arranging a meeting to discuss the implications from our side and building a Senate coalition towards this. So there's, we're able to begin to bring influential people together to understand that there's some progress that can be made towards reform.
Right. One of the things that I'm very pleased at is that we're able to bring the think tank component into politics in Washington, D.C. A lot of times in D.C., politics makes issues become highly partisan in many ways, or beholden to certain political agendas. And I think our viewers would be interested in knowing how we weighed in a recent attempt by Senator McCain to advance Jones Act reform, but through a mechanism that didn't turn out to be completely successful, and that was by trying to add a rider to the Keystone Pipeline. Do you recall that?
Yes, indeed. And unfortunately, Mr. McCain actually came forward with an idea for reform as opposed to repeal, but the way it was all presented was as a full repeal, and it raised a tremendous amount of objection. And attaching it to Keystone was just not a practical way to go.
Right. And this is where the politics comes into it, even in the language, because although the measure that Senator McCain was putting forth was fairly modest, it was simply a 2 or 3 page addition to the Keystone Pipeline bill that would allow American companies to buy our ships from foreign countries, our allies. That's all it was. It got billed, unfortunately, as a full repeal of the Jones Act, which is a 100-year-old set of laws, and that set off a firestorm in the media. It set off a firestorm of reaction from various parties, and gave the opportunity for that very modest measure to be characterized as something that would cost Americans tens of thousands of jobs and harm our national defense. Wasn't that sad that such a modest proposal ultimately got characterized as a full repeal?
It was terribly unfortunate because it really was, like you said, it was 3 pages compared to the 53,000 in the tax code. But it was a modest proposal that would have made a gigantic difference to Hawaii, not just to Hawaii. We do think of ourselves first, but But the Jones Act affects people in Texas, in Philadelphia, in New York, in California, in North Carolina. Pig farmers buy their feed from South Carolina because the Jones Act makes it too expensive to ship it from Iowa.
That's right.
All across the country, there's interest in this, but unfortunately, that little 3 pages got so mischaracterized, it hurt everybody.
And this gave us an opportunity to bring the think tank world and politics together, because we were able to communicate to numerous parties what was going on, how the media had gotten it wrong. We were able to contact Senator McCain's office, and we were able to talk to numerous parties, and found that many people realized that the language needs to change. And this is an open door to what we offer at the Grassroot Institute, which is an approach to the Jones Act that is rational and that brings people together. One that can be supported by Democrats and by Republicans, by members of unions as well, as corporates. The key to this is not to tamper with age-old features of the Jones Act that connect to national defense or connect to our jobs in the unions, but rather to look at a little piece of it and say, if, for example, we had an exemption in places like Hawaii for liquid natural gas to come in, that wouldn't in any way hinder the things that the Jones Act was established for, but actually may help us. Or if we could have some loosening up of the requirement that all ships in the United States under the Jones Act be purchased from the United States, we can move ahead. Do you sense that Washington is open to this spirit of bipartisan or nonpartisan cooperation in putting forth an update to the Jones Act?
I think that there is an opportunity now. I think the timing is good. People are listening, and it's a question of building a coalition, bringing the groups together who do understand the change. And you gave me some information just the other day that could have a big impact on this and could be a route to solving this. You mentioned that Governor Ige had said that we needed more information about the actual impact and that was a federal issue.
That's correct. And in fact, Civil Beat did an excellent article outlining the fact that very often people talk about the Jones Act, both pro and con, without a research base, without actually knowing the numbers in terms of the economic impact and the costs of the Jones Act. And as you know, Grassroot Institute is seeking ways of advancing research and looking at contracting with parties that are capable of carrying out the deepest level of research. But it was very, very encouraging to read in that Civil Beat article just last week that Governor Ige himself, when interviewed, pointed out the importance of us researching this very important issue so that I presume we have a factual basis with which to make decisions. That was a good thing.
A factual basis would help a lot here. One of the options may be, and Grassroot would need to take very active part in this, but maybe we can move our Congress up here to creating a bill or a resolution to get that study done by the government so that we don't have any question of partisanship in the study. We all need the actual facts.
In fact,
maybe we can help that.
You're letting the cat out of the bag a little bit in terms of one of our directions for legislation in Washington, D.C. I'm talking with Anderson Blom, Executive Director of Grassroot Hawaii Action, a brand new organization which works together with Grassroot Institute of Hawaii so that while the Institute is in Hawaii doing research and education, we have a component in Washington, D.C. working with policymakers to bring about a better economy and government here in the state of Hawaii. We'll be right back with more following this brief message.
Hi, James.
Hi, Keith.
My name's Keith Bettinger.
I knew that.
And I'm the host of ThinkTech Asia.
I knew that too.
Here on ThinkTech.
Fabulous. You got a great show going, Keith.
Thank you very much. And for our viewers out there that are interested in ThinkTech Asia, it airs every Tuesday from 4 to 4:45, and it can be accessed online at thinktech.com.
Yeah, so what kind of guests you like?
Well, we have a number of guests from academia, from practitioners of international affairs. Sometimes we have military officials. Sometimes we have public officials on the show. And our goal, we try to talk about current issues in South Asia, Southeast Asia, East Asia, and Central Asia, all throughout the Asian realm, in more depth than you would find in traditional mainstream
That's the
media.
difference, isn't it?
Exactly.
That you're reaching out beyond what ordinary news media would do.
Right.
And that's why we like you so much.
We're trying to provide a thinking person's perspective, an intelligent perspective on what's going on, and we're both sides of the story, or even when there's more than two sides, we try to cover every angle. And I think that that's one of the big benefits that we provide here at ThinkTech, is it's a really innovative source of educational programming for the people of Hawaii.
You're great, Keith. You are a great host. You got a great show going on. I watch it every week.
Thanks very much.
Why don't you guys watch it every week too, okay?
4:45 to 4 to 4:45 every Tuesday.
Welcome back to Ehana Kako. We're here every week on the ThinkTech Hawaii Broadcast Network. My guest today is Anderson Blom. We call him Andy. He's Executive Director of Grassroot Hawaii Action, our sister organization to the Grassroot Institute of Hawaii. And for your information, I'm actually involved in both. Looking forward to going up to Washington, D.C. as soon as Andy makes certain arrangements. Speaking of which, Andy, there's an important value that we care about greatly as we reach out. And that is that while Grassroot Institute is issues-oriented rather than partisan, we have members who are Republicans, who are Democrats, who are independents, who are libertarians. We want to help Hawaii take advantage of the current political reality. And that is that we have a Republican Congress and a Republican Senate, but we have a Democrat congressional delegation. And so what are some thoughts you have in terms of how we can help harness, and I think a lot of people in Hawaii care about this, how we can help harness the current Republican power base for the benefit of the state of Hawaii?
Well, this is a real key, because with the current majority in the House and Senate, a lot of the issues that we're dealing with, and you point out, and we have to keep emphasizing this, we are an issues-driven organization. We are not a party-driven organization. And consequently, but we partner with anyone. But a lot of the issues we're talking about really resonate with the current majority. So it's important that we bring Hawaii's thinking to that majority. Washington is actually more partisan than Hawaii is, and it's important that we get our issues out and that we let the people there who are in charge and in power have a vision of Hawaii and not disappear because of a minority party, not disappear because we have junior officials. We want to work with our current legislators, but we also want to take advantage of some of the deep connections we have, some of the, very, very good, personal and professional relationships we have with both the groups that influence our legislators, with the coalitions that influence our legislators, and with individual legislators.
Right, absolutely. And with that said, the issues that we focus on are gaining bipartisan support. For example, updating the Jones Act is something that in the last two legislative sessions has been promoted by Democrats, several of them, as well as Republicans. In fact, more Democrats than Republicans, but that's because there are more Democrats than Republicans in Hawaii. Andy, I had the opportunity about 10 days ago to meet with Congressman Kevin McCarthy, who is the majority leader in Congress now, and many people say that he is slated to become Speaker of the House, or at least one of the short list of candidates available. It was very good to talk with him because he was excited about the development of Grassroot Hawaii Action, and said that he would work with us in opening doors to be able to advance Hawaii issues, particularly those related to the Native Hawaiian nationhood issue, as well as the Jones Act issue. What are the prospects you see continuing this vein of being able to gain the support of Congress members outside of Hawaii for Hawaii issues?
I think we have an excellent opportunity. And again, primarily because we're dealing with issues that resonate with the people who are in the majority. And to the extent that we can bring everybody together, we're going to be doing that. But when we have an issue like the Jones Act, I just want to emphasize this again. We're nonpartisan. We are not taking a party line on anything. And if a party line is disadvantageous to Hawaii, as is support of the Jones Act, we need to bring people together who can take action anyway. And those people currently are in the majority. Mr. McCarthy has responded to you. Frankly, he's laid out a very warm welcome, Matt, and I'll be meeting with them this week, I hope. There's several senators in particular who are extremely receptive. I'm presenting the initial welcome from the Grassroot Hawaii Action to 2 different groups on Wednesday, and doing presentations to a total of about 250 organizations and thought leaders here to acquaint them with us and with our issues.
Well, that's terrific. If anyone watching here would like to ask a question or make a comment, ThinkTech Hawaii has a wonderful mechanism for doing that. It's called Twitter. ThinkTech Hi, ThinkTech HI. Just tweet away and let us know you're watching and ask whatever question you may have. Andy, I appreciate the fact that for some time now you've been participating with the entire virtual team of Grassroot Institute in our Monday morning policy meetings when we do a rundown of issues that affect Hawaii. Some of the issues top of mind in our feed today include the death tax. You want to talk a little bit about that and why Hawaii may want to be concerned about what's going on in D.C. with regard to this legislation?
Well, fortunately, the House passed this with a very strong majority vote. It's really important. The death tax does not hurt the wealthy. The wealthy has the accountants and the lawyers that they just deal with this. Death tax hurts small business, hurts individuals. A small business, I'm going to pick on one, the Waiala Shave Ice, which I happen to love, is near my apartment. The estate tax would take 40% of that business as a tax and would probably put them out of business if the owner.
That's right.
And this happens all over Hawaii. We are very small business. 8, 9, 10 of your friends work for 8 or 9 of every 10 of your friends work for a small business, and it cripples small business. It cripples families. And it doesn't actually make very much money for the government, if anything, but it's devastating to families, small businesses, farms. And finally, the government's doing something about it. It's expected to pass the Senate. The odds on this look very good. Something is like the Jones Act. It's something that's been around a long time. It's time to fix it.
That's right. In fact, because we levy the estate and inheritance tax the way we do currently in Hawaii, the ALEC, American Legislative Exchange Council ranking has placed Hawaii 50, the very last in terms of economic freedom in regard to this issue compared to other states. So that's a significant issue where Hawaii is carrying the brunt of something, but there are solutions that are much better. Andy, we're also concerned about the internet, particularly the internet freedom issue that is taking place. Why don't you update us on that a bit?
Well, this is another area of concern where we are dealing with, and again, this is where the majority is helping us. We're dealing with a overpowering sense of regulation. And President Obama wants the government to regulate the internet. They've tried to control political speech. They've tried to pass net neutrality and give the government control of the internet. The internet's not broken, and it serves all of us wonderfully. But if we allow regulators in there, our costs are going to go up. Our freedom of speech is going to go up. Our opportunity to use it and to access things is going to go down. One of the things people ought to do here, Google free internet and just take a look at what's going on.
Sure.
There's several campaigns out there to be certain we keep our internet free, and powerful organizations are behind these campaigns and participating. But the threat to the internet is a overlay of bureaucracy that will increase costs and limit access.
Well, give us a little primer on some of the terminology here. We at ThinkTech Hawaii here absolutely depend upon the internet, and our programs are broadcast all throughout the world as a result, and anybody can go to thinktechhawaii.com and see them. But tell us, Andy, exactly what is meant by the term net neutrality.
Net neutrality is an attempt, like many things in Washington, it doesn't mean what it says.
Right.
It sounds like a good thing, right? We all want neutrality of the net. Net neutrality means a government regulatory control of the internet. It is designed to take away the power that a Google might have, for instance, or a Yahoo might have, and just say the government's going to enforce regardless of ability or public desire, the government's going to enforce an absolutely level playing field and make everybody offer the same thing. No differences in cost, no differences in access, no differences in benefits. They're going to restrict companies from providing the internet the way they think is best. The neutrality means everybody hits the lowest common denominator, not anybody succeeds.
That's right. And that FEC power grab, as we might call it, is something that certainly will affect us here in Hawaii. One of the concerns that we have at Grassroot Institute is the levels of regulation. And very often, the regulatory climate in Hawaii follows the regulations that are set out for us in Washington, D.C. You've been tracking, Andy, the Environmental Protection Agency and some of the mushrooming, really, of an already vast array of regulations that's taking place with respect to the Clean Power Plan. Why don't we talk a little bit about that?
Well, there again, a phrase that sounds wonderful and would be Clean Power Plan is being used to affect cap and trade that Congress refused to pass. And what it does is put very onerous burdens on each state to control and to heavily tax the carbon output and all of their energy outputs. Now, we already pay a great deal for energy in Hawaii, more than anybody in the country. Clean power is going to mean that we are going to have an additional tax on our energy because they're going to tax the power plants, and because we can't even get liquid gas in to contribute to our power plants. They're all run by petroleum. We're going to have a very heavy carbon tax laid on us that the state's going to be forced to collect. It's going to get passed on to the people. Our electric costs go up. So clean power plant means the same power plant, but more cost. And don't mean to oversimplify, but that's the bottom line. Everybody's going to take more money out of their pocket for exactly what they're getting now.
That's right. Terminology is something we have to pay close attention to, and that's certainly the case with the Mortgage Choice Act of 2015. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that, especially for us in Hawaii, where mortgages mean so very much?
You've got me. I don't know the Mortgage Choice Act. I've been admired in about 14 tax bills. I didn't get that one.
Well, that's a measure where the House is attempting to ensure that the IRS will hold everybody accountable and responding to some political issues in terms of some allegations that the IRS is being used politically. Maybe when we come back next time and discuss this, we can have a little more insight into that. Andy, earlier we referred to the American Legislative Exchange Council, and that's in short ALEC. It's a research base by which we can actually take a look at the practices that are fiscal issues taking place in all 50 states and see how states compare to one another. I know you have some thoughts about ALEC's ranking of Hawaii's position with respect to other states.
Well, it's sad to say, and there's another state I want to talk about quickly as well. It's sad to say Hawaii is number 37 out of 50 in the ALEC Lafleur ranking. What's disturbing about this is its ranking from 2003 to 2013, we were number 18, which means we have fallen dramatically in our economic performance.
That's right. And that ranking of 37 is an interesting one because there are actually 15 different rankings, and that 37 has to do with our economic outlook. Much of that figure is positive because of some recent turnarounds in our economy. But in terms of long-term issues, ALEC is less optimistic. For example, in the measuring of top marginal personal income tax rates, we are 48th in the nation. I don't know which state you pay income taxes in, but I'm sure that you feel that pinch yourself, don't you, Andy?
More than I would like to. And I think that everybody in Hawaii deals with that along with our regressive GET tax. The good news, and there is some good news, although it doesn't work on the state, there are 9 bills in the House to try to alleviate tax burdens on individual taxpayers, and another 10 bills in controlling the IRS. So one of the advantages of having, and these are all underway right now this month, taxes are very much a focus here right now. And Majority Leader McCarthy, your friend and mine, is stepping up and really addressing these issues and addressing the issues about the IRS targeting individuals.
Sure.
So there's a real attempt in this Congress to straighten out these problems on the national level. If we can straighten them out on the national level, maybe in Hawaii we can learn to follow the same pattern. Because this Laffer, there's another study that was interesting on the, which is on innovation. And Hawaii has very poor rankings on innovation. We have bad internet comparatively. We have a D- in internet. We're poor on all kinds of entrepreneurial assistance. Our tech workforce, our internet, our right to work, our tax friendliness, our ability to attract investment. You know what Hawaii is outstanding in? Entrepreneurial activity.
Yes, that's right.
So when you start to put these things together, we're great in entrepreneurial activity, but we're not giving it support. That's why we're number 37. Our taxes aren't fair. That's why we're number 37.
That's right. And talking about that entrepreneurial activity, there was a very positive event sponsored by ThinkTech Hawaii recently, and that was a panel discussion with some blue chip speakers focusing on the question of investment in Hawaii, particularly offshore investment. And some of the figures that you just cited, Andy, were mentioned at this presentation, and that is that we do have some very real challenges to investment in Hawaii, and the biggest one is the capital. Where is all the capital? But there is a positive silver lining, and that is, as you do mention, entrepreneurship is high. There are entrepreneurial incubators here that are helping companies to get to the place where they need to be. But we still need a big vision that will open the door in terms of capital here in our state. Now, there's one other listing here on the ALEC Laufer report, and that is where we come in 50th, the last in the entire nation, number 50 in terms of the sales tax burden. Andy, how does this look from a national point of view? I know that at least 32 states have already decided that taxing the public for food and for medicine is not helping anybody, and so they've stopped doing that. And yet we in Hawaii continue to look at the sales tax, or the GE tax, excuse me, which combines the sales tax, as a source of revenue for projects, whether it be the rail, fixed rail system we're building on Oahu, or other proposals. How does this look from a national survey in terms of sales tax?
From a national survey,
and we are number 50 in the ALEC Laufer report.
Well, the state.
Yeah, we're having a little bit of connection problems with you, and I'm wondering if this might actually be a good time to go for a break.
Yeah.
Andy, I'm going to take a short break now. We can fix the communication there, but those of you watching, you're listening, or you're watching actually, ThinkTech Hawaii's weekly program called Ehana Kako. I didn't tell you earlier what I usually do say, and that is Ehana Kako means let's work together, and that's what we want to do here in Hawaii, to build a better economy, government, and society. We'll be right back for our closing segment with Anderson Blom of Grassroot Hawaii Action from Washington, D.C., right after this.
Inspired by an ancient culture, classical Chinese dance, vigorous physicality, timeless stories, 5,000 years of Chinese music and dance, Shen Yun presents authentic Chinese culture, Coming to Blaisdell Concert Hall, May 8th and 9th. Tickets at shenyun.com or call 808-792-3919.
Hi, I'm Jay Fidel. That's Ted Ralston. You know, Ted is the host of Where the Road Leads. It shows every Friday from 4 to 5 p.m. It's about technology. It's about how people collaborating and solve problems with modern technology. It's where the road leads. We all know that. We should all be listening. Join us there, 4 to 5 p.m. every Friday. Now, what about that do you agree with?
All of it.
I knew he'd say that. Aloha. Say aloha.
Aloha.
Good.
Welcome back to our final segment of today's Ehana Kako. Let's work together on the ThinkTech Hawaii Broadcast Network. I'm Keli'i Akina with the Grassroot Institute, and we have Executive Director of Grassroot Hawaii Action, our sister organization in D.C., Anderson Blom, chiming in for the conversation today. Let me ask Andy, what are the means by which Grassroot Hawaii Action will accomplish its purpose? I know that we have a long history at the Institute of identifying issues that affect individual liberty and a freer marketplace, as well as limiting the excessive growth or excessive regulation of government. What do we hope to accomplish, and how will we accomplish it in Washington, D.C.?
Well, what we are going to accomplish is to see that that voice and that thinking from Grassroots gets heard in Washington, D.C., and gets heard at the highest levels. We do this, our job here is to represent Hawaii and to represent what's good for Hawaii and what Hawaii needs, and to not let the 5,000 miles that separate us let Hawaii disappear from this majority Congress. And we do this through working through coalitions, working individually with legislators, working with influencers, so that when we're participate in a number of meetings and coalitions and organizational groups where we're able not just to bring the Grassroot Hawaii Action voice to the table, but to gain the support of the heavyweights in Washington on our issue, and to work with the media that think of as the trade media, the Politico and the Hill and the Daily Caller, the media up here that the influencers read
Yes.
and pay attention to. So we will be using media and the power of coalitions and like-minded groups and personal contact with legislators to see that the issues that you're talking about here and that represent the grassroots vision for Hawaii and to help the people of Hawaii get in front of not just our legislators who we'll be talking to, but the Republican majority.
That's right. And at this stage, we're following a model that has been established by many of the larger national think tanks in the country, in which there is an institute that does the research and education, but a separate organization that does the activism directly with legislators in Washington, D.C. And it may be good for us to talk about some of the differences. Our institute, the Grassroot Institute of Hawaii, is a 501c3 organization. It's a charity, and as such, it does not get involved in partisan politics at all. Its primary focus is to do research and to collaborate with partners from 49 other states and national organizations in the production of research for Hawaii, and to educate the public. And we also educate legislators and policymakers in terms of best practices for various legislation. Now, Andy, talk a little bit in similar terms about the 501c4, which is what Grassroot Hawaii Action is.
Exactly. We are a 501c4, which is a not-for-profit advocacy and issues organization. We can do lobbying, we can do education, we can do advocacy, and we do this, on an issues basis, on issues driven by the think tank, by the research, by the information garnered and put forth by Grassroot Institute. Our job is to take that thinking, take those ideas, take those concepts, and work with legislators and influencers and media and bring them both to the public and into reality as bills, as resolutions, as issues in the public square.
That's right. And as a separate organization in terms of its incorporation from the Grassroot Institute, Grassroot Action has the capacity to do lobbying as a 501c4 organization. Sometimes people are afraid of that term lobbying, but really the key thing about it is that it's something very, very simple. It's simply trying to influence legislation and those who make legislation. I can tell you from our end at Grassroot Institute, we have no coffers with which to buy our way into Washington, D.C., nor do we represent any particular industry or government agency. We do not, at the 501c3, take any funds whatsoever from government or the military. We are completely funded by private individuals and organizations. Now, the Grassroot Action, however, is a lobbying organization and a separate organization as well. Do you want to talk a little bit about how that lobbying takes place, Andy?
Well, it takes place, and you mentioned donations, and of course the 501c4 Grassroot Y Action gratefully accepts donations. The key difference is that donations are not tax deductible and they are anonymous. We do not disclose donors because people sometimes are concerned about giving to controversial issues. We're not out to make controversial issues. We're out to make things better for the people of Hawaii, and we do that by bringing that good research, bringing that good thinking to the attention of legislators and getting them to work not only with us but for us to seek a larger.
You're fading out on the sound, and I'll just mention a couple of things until you're back on and connected. All people who try to influence legislation represent a
bring
point
our
of view.
idea.
And the interesting thing is that these points of view are often at odds with other points of view. At the Grassroot Institute, our point of view is anchored on principle, the principles of the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence. We stand for individual liberty, for the freer market, and limited accountable government, rather than a constituency. So the funny thing is sometimes in standing for these principles, we might not please certain people. But because we don't link our funding to the issues that we promote, we're able to go ahead and do that. Andy, now I think you're back on. We were just wrapping up our conversation about what the 501c4 will do in Washington, D.C.
Well, what we are determined to do is to advance legislative movement and public awareness and action on the issues that matter most to Hawaii. Our cost of living and the Jones Act, the tax burdens that people in Hawaii are facing. There's every day, there's things going on. Congress is talking about renewing the Patriot Act. That affects people in Hawaii. Congress is dealing with limiting the IRS. That affects people in Hawaii. Congress is dealing with the death tax. That's very important for our small businesses. Congress is, we have regulatory assaults on the internet, regulatory assaults on our energy policies, regulatory assaults on something as simple and as simple seeming as declaring large portions of the Pacific national sanctuary and national park zones, which is limiting our fishing fleet.
Right. Well, Andy, we're going to have to go down in depth, go through some of the issues that you've raised there, and certainly your plate is full. I want to thank you on behalf of the Grassroot Institute and Hawaii's people for being a voice for Hawaii in Washington, D.C. I'll see you there very soon, in fact, as we continue to work together. Much aloha to you, and stay warm.
Well, thank you. If I do good, can I come home?
I know you'll be back here many times. Everyone, this has been a wonderful opportunity just to get an update from Andy Blom, who's our executive director for the sister organization we've just started called the Grassroot Hawaii Action. And if you have any interest or questions in this, just go to our website at grassrootinstitute.org. In signing off, I want to say thanks to Jay Fidel, our producer, and all the great people working at ThinkTech Hawaii. Go to them at thinktechhawaii.com. Until next time, Aloha.